Ngeba Sojola here. The ground offensive by the Israeli Defense Force has begun, right? It has begun about 3 weeks after the air campaign they have conducted over Gaza and over Syria, right? And yes, they've started to send in troops and tanks into particularly northern Gaza. Now, as mentioned in the previous videos, the ground offensive in Gaza is very dangerous because of the dense urban setup of the warfare and the very interconnected web of tunnels and networks that exists under Gaza, right? Now, it is believed that the Israeli wants to introduce new technology in dealing with these tunnels, right? The first technology they want to introduce is basically known as a sponge bomb, right? So you basically, it is a bomb, right, that releases a chemical that basically hardens, right, into a very solid substance, right, which eventually, what can I say, seals off a tunnel, right? So you set off this bomb, right? It releases a certain substance. This certain substance hardens into becoming um, a very hard substance, which basically blocks uh, 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 the tunnel, right? So they want to use that to block out the militia and them using the tunnels to basically against the Israeli Defense Force, right? Now, here's another interesting fact about the Israeli Defense Force. Number one, they are starting to send out messages saying that they have caught some Hamas militias, right, or Hamas fighters, basically, and they have found on them certain USBs, right, that has information about Hamas building or constructing or producing a chemical weapon, right? So Israel is raising a red flag saying that Hamas is using chemical weapons, right? But when we understand what a false flag is that when the Israelis defense force says that the enemy is going to stage a chemical attack, right? It now gives them the justification to use chemical weapons in regards to the tunnels specifically, right? Now, through this short period of the war, right? The month of August or the month of October, right? There has been at least one accusation alleging that the Israeli Defense Force had used the first one, white phosphorus, in their air campaign, right? And now the Israeli Defense Force is raising another flag saying that they might use a chemical attack to deal with the tunnels. The tunnels are very dangerous, right? Number one, they can be booby trapped, right? They can collapse. They can be lacks of oxygen. They can, if anything can happen in a tunnel, right? So the Israeli Defense Force thinks that the best way to deal with the tunnel issues in Gaza is to use a chemical attack. Now, I want to give you an example in history, particularly Syria, right, on what happened exactly when a chemical attack was flouted, right? Now, there was a claim in Syria that the government of Syria is using sarin gas against its own citizen, right? But it eventually came out that this chemical attack or chemical weapons attack in Syria was actually staged, right, by the British intelligence, right, by the rebel fighters in Syria, right, and a what can I say, an NGO which was known as White Helmets. White Helmets was an NGO that helped to clear bodies, help people survive attacks, and basically it's an NGO in a time of war, right? So it eventually came out that the British government, the rebels in Syria, and the White Helmets NGO basically planned out a fake attack, right? Which gave premise, right? Or gave reason for the US government to come in and start bombing Syria, right? Now, the same thing is being planned out. The Israel Defense Force first is claiming that the enemy is busy with a chemical attack, right? Which is a false flag, right? So if the enemy in this case is really busy, Hamas, right, is really busy with a chemical attack, it gives premise to the US Army for them to come inside the war, right? Now, when the US comes inside, the first thing it does, it will start going for Iran because Iran has military installations all around the region. So the moment US comes into this, it will turn into a regional war, and I believe eventually turn into a third world war, right? Where the superpowers, the world superpowers now will need to come in and contribute their 2 cents worth. So we'll still keep an eye on the war, and we'll update you on anything that occurs in regards to the second phase of the ground offensive by the IDF. Thank you very much.